Okay, so now let's go back and review the sensory experience that you have after your ego collapse and see how this plays out in your behavior, which your parents and the police and psychiatrists will take for your symptoms that you are in fact insane, okay? Well, most of these are going to be obvious. With this incredible surge of energy that you have, you can't sleep, you can't stop moving, and you can't stop talking. And among the first things your parents will want you to do is go to bed, get some sleep, settle down, and shut up. With that sense of oneness I was talking about, everything might seem like a dream, and you'll want to test reality. You might want to walk through a wall, or maybe go out and try and stand in traffic, or try and jump out a window, and that of course could be very dangerous for you. Because you have this deeper understanding, you'll want to share your ideas with people, but very often they won't be ready to listen to what you have to say. They'll find your ideas very disturbing because they break their worldview of things, and your exaggerated behavior doesn't help much either. Because the experience is so indescribable, you will use metaphors like, I'm in heaven, or I am God, and you might be speaking symbolically or poetically, but the people around you will take you literally, and they'll think, oh my God, he thinks he's in heaven, he thinks he's God, he's totally crazy. And with this enhanced sensory experience, you may respond very strongly to smells or noises, be very entranced by certain visual patterns and things like this, leading to more strange behavior. Because it is such a negative and judgmental environment, often people act terribly in front of their psychiatrists, giving the psychiatrist more proof that you need more medication. But the truth is, you're just reacting to him. With a loss of your sense of time, you may have no idea how long you've been in the hospital, how long you've been in a certain situation, what day is it, what year is it, and of course people around you will find this very disturbing. Perhaps one of the most positive aspects of the bipolar manic crisis is this overwhelming sense of love that you have inside of you, and you're willing to express this love with perhaps even perfect strangers that you're just meeting and that are sending you positive energy or love. And you'll put your arms around them, you want to hug them, maybe even get sexual with them. And even this somewhat positive experience can be looked on with fear from others simply because it is so different and it's not normal. I think one of the key characteristics of bipolar mania is your loss of shame, which when that comes, you immediately want to take off your clothes as if in protest, like you look down and you think, what are these clothes doing on me? And you need to get naked, and you'll very often want to piss or even shit. Basically anywhere you are, masturbation isn't out of the question. There's this total release of repressions, and especially when you're in a public place, boy, this can get you in a lot of trouble with the police. That sense of sacredness I talked about can lead you to really revering or bowing to people as you truly identify with the God side of them. You may see people that are close to you that are giving you love as a saint or an angel of some kind, and you'll treat them accordingly. In that middle world we talked about, people often tend to get quite delusional. They start to make up stories about what's really happening to them. And in that story, they will be playing a character of some kind, like I said, often being tested by God. And the people around them may be other characters as well. You might see other people as like a specific saint or a specific devil, something like this. And as you're being tested by God, you will often be very disobedient with worldly authority. You will try and resist arrest. You will fight people who are trying to control you, and you will literally think that this is a matter of life and death for you. And in fact it may be, because even though it is a delusion, this delusion has tremendous symbolic meaning for you as a person going through it. And as I mentioned before, you have this confrontation with death in almost all manic crises if they're allowed to play out long enough, which will lead you to believe, as I did, that I was actually dead, or that you're dying in some way. And along with that, and being in this middle world, you may think that you need to kill yourself in a way to move on to the next level, to the spirit world, and leave the material world. This can lead to a form of a ritualized suicide. This suicide isn't so much an attempt to end your life as to continue your life on the spirit level, and it can be very symbolic. So for example, in my situation, a suicide was simply turning out the lights in a ballroom that I was in. The whole thing seemed like a dream to me, and I thought if I just turn out these lights, I would annihilate myself and move on to the next level. The imagery of regressions can come in many forms. Personally, I remember revisiting parts of my childhood, then going back into experiences of the cosmos. At one point in the hospital, I was making ape noises as I was visualizing and seeing the movie 2001: Space Odyssey, like I was going back in the beginning of time, and that was the representation of that. And believe me, when you start making ape noises in front of the psychiatrist, you're in for a long stay. And once you have a shift in values and want deeper integrity, a big part of it often has to do with bringing up family issues. And especially when you've shown signs of insanity, it's very easy for the families to go, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, you're crazy." And it can motivate them to want to drug you simply to control you and keep you quiet. And finally, with this expanded awareness and your increasing concern for social issues, you may find yourself getting very emotional about things you see on TV or issues you hear about, which again is just one more piece of your disturbing behavior. So despite the fact that so many of the sensory experiences and emotions that you're experiencing in a bipolar manic crisis are positive, your behavior will be strange in some way, and almost everything you do will be interpreted in a negative way by your parents, your psychiatrist, and our culture. If you think you're God, that's a negative. If you're very emotional, that's a negative. If you don't know what day it is, that's a negative. Every single thing you say or do will be met with fear and apprehension from the people around you. Now, I don't want to overgeneralize by making this sound like a great big party that was ruined by your parents and doctors. There is a lot of fear that goes along with this as well. A big part of the fear, especially I believe for teenagers, is simply the fear of the newness of the whole experience. So even though you're in this positive environment, when you sort of snap back into reality, you find that transition very frightening. Another source of fear will be the fears that you have carried around with you your whole life that have stayed locked up inside you. And when you have that ego collapse, at some point those fears might just start to come out and leave you. It was Dr. Carl Jung who first identified this somewhat scary part of ourselves, calling it the shadow, or our shadow, over 80 years ago. And when our shadow starts to come out, we can start to act pretty nasty. One minute we could be saying to somebody that we love them, and then maybe an hour or even a half an hour later, we're like, "We hate you, get out of my face." But what's important to remember is that in the overall process of things, this is another part of the healing and needs to be nurtured. Also in the shadow may be psychotic features lurking that can lead a person into being violent or into destructive behavior, which of course becomes very difficult to manage even for the best of us. And so with all of these spiritual aspects happening, being in a middle world, having fears and psychotic aspects coming out, you may even start to question your own sanity, and at the very least you will be very, very confused about what is happening to you. So in conclusion, I would just like to say that yes, when a person goes into a bipolar manic crisis, they do exhibit very strange behavior, there's no doubt about it. But there are reasons for this. There is a sensory experience that the person is undergoing underneath this that psychiatrists don't even care to understand. And because of that, these people are judged very harshly, and it's not fair what's being done to these people right now. I think it's very interesting that all of the people that I've talked to who have gone through a full bipolar manic crisis and in a sense come out on the other side like myself and found the experience to be very beneficial were about 30 years old and very aware of other religious practices like meditation, Buddhism, things like this, so that when they had their experience they could easily grasp the inherent spirituality of what was happening to them. And I think that if more people in a bipolar manic crisis are going to heal, that the support network we have of doctors and family and friends needs to come at this process with more love and less fear. They need to support this person, and they need to understand that it's basically a healing spiritual event that needs to happen for the long-term benefit of this person. So I guess to sum up so far in this series on what psychiatrists don't know, I would say that psychiatrists don't know that a bipolar manic crisis is first caused by an ego collapse. They also have no understanding of the sensory experience that you're having, which is deeply spiritual and they misinterpret as crazy. And they also have no idea to treat you in a compassionate way. They tend to be very judgmental, constantly analyzing you and not even treating you as a person, as I've shown in this video. So I think it's important at this point to ask yourself, forget about my experience in the hospital. Forget about the research I've done. Forget about where I get my ideas. That really doesn't matter. What's important is whether or not these experiences that I'm sharing with you are reflective of your own experience. Because unlike your psychiatrist, I think it's very important for you to be taking responsibility for your own well-being, your own healing, and making your own decisions with regards to your mental health.